The sharp, metallic ring of steel clashing against steel echoed through the vast university gymnasium, sending shivers of pure adrenaline down my spine. It felt like sparks were literally flying with every parry, my heart racing in sync with the rhythmic stomping of fencing boots. The varsity fencers moved with the silence and lethality of ninjas, their lunges sharp enough to cut the air and their dodges smooth like flowing water. Watching them from the sidelines, I felt a deep, aching wish to move with that kind of grace and power. Unfortunately, the universe had built me different, and by different, I mean entirely incompatible with physical coordination. I had been trying to pass the fencing team tryouts for weeks, but my limbs seemed to have a personal vendetta against me. Instead of executing a perfect riposte, I would usually trip over thin air and smack myself in the face with the guard of my own practice sword. After the match ended in my usual humiliation, I realized with a groan that I had dropped my student ID somewhere near the abandoned construction back lot. Distracted and replaying every perfect move I had failed to execute, I wandered into the dimly lit area. My foot caught on a loose wooden panel, and I stumbled forward with the grace of a newborn giraffe. Gravity took over instantly, pulling me down into the gaping maw of an open excavation pit. I hit the ground hard, dirt clouding my vision as I frantically patted my pockets for my phone. Panic set in immediately when I realized my pockets were empty and my lifeline was gone. I screamed for help until my throat was raw, but the only response was the mocking silence of the night. Eventually, exhaustion overpowered fear, and I curled up in the dirt, defeated and possibly crying myself to sleep. When I opened my eyes again, the darkness was absolute, heavy, and suffocating. I had no concept of how long I had been trapped, but the cold had seeped into my bones. Looking up, I saw the faint, ethereal blue glow of moonlight spilling over the edge of the pit. It wasn't much light, but it offered a tiny sliver of comfort in the oppressive blackness. Suddenly, a silhouette appeared, and a girl's face slowly peered over the edge, framed by the moonlight. I scrambled up, desperate and pleading for her to help me out of this hole. My voice trailed off into a whisper when I locked eyes with her. Her eyes were a piercing, cold crimson, glowing with an emotionless stare that froze me in place. She spoke calmly, stating that if I made it down, a path upward must exist, and finding it was entirely up to me. I sarcastically thought that while the life lesson was inspiring, a rope or a ladder would be significantly more helpful. I shouted that I would climb a snake skin if she threw one down, but she had already turned to leave. Panic surged again as her head disappeared, and I begged her to at least toss down my phone. Just as I thought she had abandoned me, she reappeared, casually holding my smartphone between her fingers. She asked if I was referring to the device, and when I confirmed, she simply told me that if I wanted it, I had to climb. I protested that the wall was 20 feet high and I had the physical strength of a toddler. She looked down with an intensity that pierced my soul, saying strength begins when you reach for the unreachable. Something about her voice triggered a spark of defiance in me, so I decided to try. My first jump was pathetic, but the shame of her watching me fueled a sudden burst of adrenaline. I clawed at the dirt wall, digging my fingers in as if my life depended on it. With a guttural scream, I lunged upward, jumping higher than I ever believed physically possible. I scaled the wall like a frantic spider, pulling myself over the ledge and collapsing onto the grass. Gasping for air, I realized that this strange girl had somehow forced me to unlock a hidden reserve of power. I stood up to thank my mysterious savior, and my breath caught in my throat. Under the direct moonlight, her silver-white hair shimmered, and she looked utterly otherworldly. She muttered something about not wanting to visit this place but having no choice, which confused me deeply. When I asked where she was from, she ignored me and drifted away like a floating lantern. I chased after her around the corner, but the corridor was empty. She had vanished into thin air. The next morning, I was still shaking, convinced I had met a ghost, which made focusing in class impossible. Belle, my best friend and neighbor since childhood, noticed my 1,000-yard stare immediately. She nudged me, asking what was going on in my head, joking that she would pay $1 billion for my thoughts. I started to explain about the mysterious girl and the pit, but the classroom door burst open. It was her, the girl from the pit, introduced to the class as Sky, a new transfer student. Every boy in the room seemed to lose their collective minds the moment she stepped in. When asked to introduce herself, she scanned the room like a queen surveying her subjects. She coolly stated she had little to say to those she didn't understand yet, but she would observe. The entire class was dumbfounded by her arrogance and charisma, but I just stared in shock. She walked down the aisle and took the empty seat right next to me without glancing my way. I tried to whisper that I was the guy from the hole, but she stared ahead as if I didn't exist. Throughout the lecture, she sat perfectly still, eyes locked on the screen like she was analyzing battle tactics. Later that day, I dragged Belle to the announcement board to check the fencing schedule. A calm, serious voice behind us asked how one joins the battle, startling me. I turned to see Sky, her presence so ethereal it gave me literal goosebumps. I explained it was a tryout and listed the bureaucracy of forms and waivers required. She cut Belle off with a single look and demanded to know where the gym was. We pointed down the hall, and she marched away like a warrior heading to a duel. We followed her to the gym, where practice was already in full swing. Sky walked onto the mats like she owned the building, interrupting the team captain. She picked up a practice foil, criticizing its lack of an edge but accepting its balance. The captain, amused, challenged her to show what she had, and the room went silent. What followed was a massacre. Sky moved like a phantom, fluid and dangerous. She dismantled 5 fencers in a row without breaking a sweat or raising her pulse. It wasn't just fencing, it was a mesmerizing dance of destruction that left everyone speechless. Belle and I stood frozen, watching her destroy the final opponent with one clean, effortless strike. From that day on, Sky became a campus legend, feared by some and worshipped by others. Belle remained suspicious, convinced that Sky was hiding a dangerous secret beneath her Barbie doll exterior. I, however, was hooked, following Sky's progress as she dominated every sport from polo to martial arts. She won everything but never celebrated, acting like a max-level player bored in a tutorial level. I even saw her correcting a shy student's posture in the martial arts club with a rare gentleness. Belle eventually decided enough was enough and initiated Operation Shadow, meaning we were going to stalk her. Another day, she stood under a flickering hallway light, unmoving, as if communicating with the electricity. Belle was convinced she was a vampire, while I was starting to believe she was a spy. Our investigation hit a snag one night outside a convenience store when 2 thugs cornered us. They demanded money, shoving me into a rack of ramen when I tried to stand my ground. Before the situation could escalate, Sky stepped out of the shadows of the store aisle. She calmly read the back of an ice cream tub while warning the thugs to back off. When the thug grabbed Belle, the air temperature dropped drastically, and the lights flickered. Sky moved in a blur, twisting the thug's wrist and throwing him into a snack shelf with terrifying force. The second thug panicked, ran outside, and inexplicably hotwired a nearby construction bulldozer. He drove the machine toward the storefront, screaming that he would crush us all. While Belle and I panicked, Sky stepped forward and grabbed the front of the massive machine. With a grunt of effort, she lifted the bulldozer into the air, defying all laws of physics. She hurled the heavy machinery into a glowing portal that appeared out of nowhere, vanishing it instantly. Belle fainted on the spot, and I stood there, my brain unable to process what I had just witnessed. The next evening, I found Sky standing by the back lot, half shrouded in shadow. I confronted her, thanking her for saving us but admitting how useless I felt. She looked at me with a rare softness, telling me that shame is heavy, but standing up is what matters. She offered to train me, leading me through the trees to a brick wall where she summoned a portal. I followed her through the shimmering light into a dimension filled with ancient weapons. She told me she was only meant to teach equals, but she missed the feeling of having a disciple. My training began immediately, a brutal regimen of sword swings and combat drills. My life became a cycle of classes, bruises, and Sky's stoic instruction in the void. I improved rapidly, learning to move with intent rather than fear. One day, I arrived early and saw Sky training alone, counting down millions of swings as a form of penance. It was then I realized she wasn't just strong, she was carrying a burden I couldn't comprehend. Belle eventually caught me sneaking off and demanded the truth about my disappearances. I confessed I was training to stop being the guy who needed saving, referencing the scratch on her forehead. Belle worried about Sky's origins, but accepted that I needed to do this for myself. The day of the final fencing tryouts arrived, and I stepped onto the mat with a new calmness. I moved without thinking, my body remembering every grueling lesson from the void dimension. I won match after match, seeing my name light up the top of the scoreboard. Bursting with pride, I ran to the portal location to tell Sky the good news. The spot was empty, the portal was gone, and Sky was nowhere to be found. That night, a chill woke me up, and I found Sky standing on my balcony under the moonlight. She told me she had to leave to attend to matters I couldn't yet understand. When I begged for answers about who she was, she spoke in riddles about bonds turning to curses. She opened a final portal, stepped through, and vanished from my world completely. The school moved on, but I felt a hollow emptiness where my mentor used to be. Weeks later, Belle burst into my room, shoving her phone in my face, screaming about a game update. On the screen was a character announcement for Genshin Impact, featuring white hair and crimson eyes. It was her. Sky was actually Skirk, a legendary master from the world of Teyvat. I realized the only way to get my answers was to dive into the world she came from. The new version 5.7 of Genshin Impact is here, expanding the world of Teyvat like never before. Skirk, the formidable cryo sword user and master of the Abyss, finally joins the roster. Players can also explore Natlan with Dainsleif and unlock new characters like Mauika. The update features a permanent combat mode and optimization for artifacts to perfect your build. If you want to find the strength to face the abyss, download Genshin Impact using the link below. Use my exclusive gift code to start your journey and maybe, just maybe, you'll find her too.